Mostly Summercraft here. Today I've got this big piece of oak. It's quite thin. It's got bark still on it, which means I think it was cut in the winter time. What I want to do is make a platter with a live edge. So hopefully we can retain the bark. If we don't, I'll remove it all and just scorch the rim. We'll have to see how that goes. But there is some very nice curly figure inside of this. It's a crotch feature and it looks pretty cool, so I'm hoping that I can retain a lot of this curl in the wood, as this will be the underside of the bowl. So I'm going to get this cut on the bandsaw and then we'll come back and we'll mount it on the lathe. Okay, so I've got my cutting jig. It's a 12-inch piece of plywood. I'm going to cut this out to the 12-inch diameter bowl blank, and then we'll get it mounted on the chuck to the bark side so that we can make a start for a natural edge bowl. Right, so there it is, cut out on the bandsaw. Came off in one piece quite nicely. And I can get some pen blanks out of this, maybe a bottle stopper or something. Okay, so here it is. Not a huge piece of wood, not at all. It's quite thin, in fact. I don't even know if I'm going to retain that bark or not. So some thin CA might help it stay on. We'll have to see. I think that's my plan of attack. If I can get it to stay on with thin CA, that's what I'm going to do. But the first thing I need to do is there's my center established. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to approach that with a Forstner bit to give me a nice flat surface to put my wormwood screw into, or I might actually use my faceplate. Let's take a look at that, see how that will sit. Because it's not sitting perfectly flush, I can shim it so that it's more level with the piece of wood, however I want it to be. This is going to get hollowed, so I could remove some bark here to kind of flatten it out a little bit, and I don't have to be particularly careful with that. I can just hit that with a hammer or something, whatever it takes. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to remove a bit of the bark from here to see if I can get this to sit nicely. And I think that sits in there quite nicely. I'm just going to put all of the screws in there now. Alright, so I'm going to put this on the lathe. See if the might be a bit of an issue having the motor in the way. Possibly, yeah. Looks like it is. That sucks. I need an extension. Unless I can get this to come out some more, which I think I need to do. Okay, so this is hitting the lathe motor right here. So you can either get an extension for the spindle, or you can adjust the wood on the faceplate, maybe shim it just to move it. I don't have to move it very far, maybe half an inch or so. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'll use probably a couple of longer screws in that area. going to take a quick opportunity to drizzle some thin CA around the bark edge where it meets the wood. I just don't want any nasty surprises. So I've got the shape that I want pretty much for the outside, but I've noticed that it isn't actually oak at all, it is walnut. When I bought this piece of wood I was informed that it was in fact oak, but now that I've cut into it and got it turned I can see that it is in fact walnut, so I'm very happy about that. I still need to sand it, but I've noticed that there's some burl right here, and it's the crotch feature as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to apply some Danish oil, and I'm going to sand this, and I'm going to use that slurry of wet sawdust and sanding action to fill in any of these little cavities. Okay, so let's see what this looks like with some oil applied. Got some absolutely beautiful quilting in this. Interesting though, it's just the one half of the crotch feature that has that. Okay, so I'm going to continue sanding this now and reapplying oil as I go. So at this point I've got the bowl sanded down to 400 grit. It's a beautiful piece of walnut. It's got some lovely figure right in through here, quilting and just beautiful. So what I'm going to do now is clean it all with alcohol, apply some sanding sealer, and then we'll go Yorkshire grit regular, and I'm even going to apply Yorkshire grit microfine. Applying alcohol will take out all the dirt out of the grain of the wood. You don't want that under your finish. Okay, now I think we're ready for some sanding sealer. I'm going to apply 3 thin coats of sanding sealer. This dries really quickly as the alcohol evaporates from the sanding sealer. Okay, so I'll take a pad to it and just denib this. Now we're ready for Yorkshire grit. Probably the last aluminum can in the world. Okay. I'm going to apply this all over, and I'm not going to try not to put it on the bark because I don't really want to get it into the bark. I'm not going to be able to spin this at particularly fast speed because of the uneven distribution of the weight of the piece of wood. It'll vibrate too much. Okay, so that's good and coated. I'm going to turn the lathe on now, and we'll buff this to a pre-finish for Hampshire sheen. that's looking pretty nice. So I'm going to be putting Yorkshire grit microfine paste on it next, which I just received from Glen Senior. Haven't used it yet, so this will be the first time I use it. Not really what it's intended for, it's really intended for acrylics and such, but I'm going to put it on here anyway. Okay, so here is a tin of Yorkshire grit microfine abrasive paste. I'm going to open this tin. It's the first tin to be used in Canada. Let's see what it looks like, because I haven't seen it yet. There it is, a very white pasty substance, and let's get some on the bowl. I can actually feel the abrasion. It's a lot creamier than regular Yorkshire grit, but like I said, I can still feel the abrasive component to it. Okay. That is nice and coated with Yorkshire grit microfine paste. I'm now going to turn the lathe on slow speed. Again, I can't really go as fast as I'd like to, just because of the imbalance of the piece of wood. But that feels good. That feels like it's definitely doing something there. Okay, let's get this turned on. Beautiful piece of wood, absolutely lovely. What I'm going to apply to this now is Hampshire sheen microcrystalline wax. This is about the same consistency as the microfine paste, but this is microcrystalline wax, and what it will do is I'll apply it, I'll allow it to dry for about 10 minutes, and then I will buff it to a shine. And it's a nice hard finish, so it's very durable. Okay, so at this point I've got it sanded to about 150. What I'm going to do is I'm going to apply some oil and continue wet sanding and get rid of as many of the scratches as I can out of the finish. With each grit, as I go down the grits, we'll get rid of all of the scratches. What I really want to do is bring out that grain and make it pop. As you can see, the quilting in it is spectacular from the underside, and it's coming all the way through to the top side. And now that I'm applying oil, I'm seeing that all in this area here. It's just beautiful. So I'm at a point where I've got this sanded to 320 grit. I've got rid of all of the tear out. There wasn't that much anyway, but it's always difficult sanding a piece like this when you've got the live edge, because you're basically turning air in certain locations, so you're hit and miss all the way around. So it's a lot of fun, but you've got to watch your fingers at the same time, and you've got to be really careful because you can lose the bark even at this point when you're sanding. So anyway, I've got this sanded at 320. I've been applying oil as I've been sanding it to 320 grit. So around about 220, 320, I started applying a little bit of oil just to get into that grain. What I'm going to do now is give it a good clean with alcohol, get as much of that oil out of there as I can now, and clean the grain. Get all of the sawdust and any slurry out of there, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply my sanding sealer. So I've got to get all of that out of the finish. I'm going to apply my sanding sealer and then Yorkshire grit and Yorkshire grit microfine. As I said before, this isn't really what it's intended for. Microfine is for acrylics and resins, but I thought I've got it, I'm going to give it a go anyway. Just get that higher grit equivalent of sanding. So 320 right now, and it's going to get higher than that. It's going to get smoother than that with the Yorkshire grit products. So that's basically as much as I need to get out of there. That's clean now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, which is basically shellac mixed with alcohol, and I'm going to put 3 thin coats of that and let them dry with a paper towel. Just wipe that on. It's a good sized bowl this. I usually turn things not much bigger than about 10 inches. This is a good 12 inches around, and with the live edge really makes it an interesting piece. Alright, so I've got a good coating of sanding sealer on that, so now I'm just going to denib it a little bit with a scouring pad on slow speed. Just so there's no streaks in the sanding sealer. Now I'm going to get regular Yorkshire grit across the surface. And there it is, finished. It's a 12.5 inch wide actually by 3 inches, and it varies in height with the bark. but it's a beautiful figured piece of walnut, more so than I initially thought. I actually was sold this by a wood mill down the road, and they said it was oak, and I really didn't know. And it sat in my carport for 2 years, and here it is. Finally I got it turned. I've been wanting to do a live edge bowl for some time, just because they're very interesting. You never know what you're going to wind up with, and you never know how it's going to sit on the chuck. As you saw earlier, I had to shim the piece on the faceplate to make it just how I wanted it, so that it wasn't hitting the motor as well. Actually, this model of lathe has the issue of the motor being in the way, so some lathes don't have that issue. This one does, but you can get extensions for the spindle if required. But anyway, there it is. I'm very happy with it. I hope you enjoyed the process, and I hope you come back and watch me in my shop another time. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next project video. Take care now.